exhibit here at the Philadelphia Museum of Jewish Art. It's titled Repairing the Earth, Tikkun Olam. It is a show by the artist and environmentalist, activist Diane Burko. Welcome, Diane. Before we get started with tonight's program, please indulge me for a few minutes while I thank a number of people who are responsible for this exhibit. The Philadelphia Museum of Jewish Art has been in existence for a little over 40 years. And it was started as a small museum here in Rhodesh, housed in Rhodesh, Olam. And our mission has always been to display and to exhibit contemporary art with Jewish themes. We've continued, we've amassed a significant permanent exhibit, which is housed here in the museum, but it is all due to the help of and generosity of our donors. We exist from show to show, and we raise funds in order to put on these exhibits twice a year. So I'd like to begin by thanking the sponsors of this particular show. And I would invite you to please stand up so that we as a community can thank you for your support of the show. The first is the Lewis N. Cassette Foundation, and I'm hoping that Sue Kirschbaum is here. Yes, thank you, Sue. Please stand. Joan Saul, in memory of her husband, Hyman Saul. She could not be with us. She's enjoying the sun of Florida. But Joan Saul was our first curator. She worked hand in hand with Gail Rosenberg, our first director. And together, they put on 2 to 3 shows a year for the last 40 years. So thank you to Joan Saul. Jane Biberman, is she here? Jane, thank you very much. Floris and Jack Denus, right here. No. Well, thank you. Oh, thank you, I'm so grateful. Dina Herron and Alfredo Mari. Dina is a past president and has always been tremendously supportive of our efforts. Andrea Kramer and Lee Rosengard. Thank you. Andrea is a member of the board and has contributed in numerous ways to the life of the synagogue, so thanks, Andrea. An anonymous donor, Valerie Asher, who I just met for the first time. Thank you, Valerie. And myself and my very generous husband, Bob. Thank you. I'd like to now thank Hank Bernstein. Hank Bernstein brought us Diane's work, the PMJA committee, brought us her work and suggested that this might be a show that we would like to engage in. We looked at the work and were immediately taken, not only because of the work itself, but its message. So thank you, Hank, for working on this show for over a year. We couldn't have done it without you. Along with the logistics of this show, there's an added component tonight, and that's our annual Vodka fundraising event, which we have every year celebrating Hanukkah. And you saw the lighting. We lit our grand menorah in the lobby that actually, I'm proud to say, was once at the White House, celebrating Hanukkah at the White House. So we're very proud of this menorah, Hanukkah. But so following this, we have our Vodka Hanukkah party. And for this, I bow to our terrific Meryl Brotman and Roz J, who have been doing this event now for years and years, and every year it is more festive and more enjoyable and more delicious. So thank you both very much. And then just lastly, a heartfelt thank you to my best friend and sister-in-law, Gail Rosenberg. She's been at my side. She began with Joan Saul 40 years ago with this museum. She has seen it grow. She's gone to New York. She's hunted down artists to display, and along with Joan Saul has put the Philadelphia Museum of Jewish Art on the map. So thank you very much, Gail. Now I'd like to begin our program for the evening. And I'd like to begin by introducing Cantor Aaron Frankel. She is here somewhere. And Cantor Aaron will give us some insights into the theme of this show, the title of this show, Tikkun Olam, Repairing the Earth, and the work of Diane Burko, and how the two are tied together, which is part of our mission, the idea of Jewish themes in artwork. So I welcome Cantor Aaron to talk about our themes.
Thanks, Janine. This year, our congregation is celebrating the 90th anniversary of this room that we're sitting in together, the sanctuary, and really this whole wing, this whole part of the building, where art has been a part of the life of this congregation for over 40 years, which is an incredible commitment to the value of the expression of art and how it teaches us about our Jewish values and our Jewish lives. It's an incredible commitment that this congregation has made to make sure that that art remains on our walls and that it continues to engage us in new ways. That there's always something new to see and learn from. And you can think in those 90 years what the community, everybody who's been sitting in the seats that you're in now, what they've experienced out in the world. Incredible things over these past 90 years. Incredibly relevant discussions to have about the way that our lives are impacted by what's going on outside of these walls. This current exhibit could not express that more forcefully than anything we could offer right now. How many times in the past month have you heard people talking about climate change? It is part of the international conversation. It's part of the worry that keeps us up at night. It's part of the challenge of living in the world today. And our Jewish values help us keep that at the forefront of our minds. And the art on the wall that Diane has brought to us allows us to engage with it in a different way. So I hope you'll be inspired as you go through the exhibit to work differently so that you can express your own Jewish values in a very vibrant way. That's what art teaches us to do. And so we're so grateful for everything you've brought to us. And let me also thank Janine Sloan and the entire PMJA task force and committee for all of the work that you do to make sure that we can maintain this commitment to the arts and to having art on our walls. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce Cynthia Valoric, who is our guest curator for tonight's show. And Cynthia's curricula vitae goes on, and I could read on and on. But in short, she is a published art historian, lecturer, and a research assistant in the American Art Department of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. She's worked with Diane on many different projects, and so is very in touch with Diane's work, her process, and her vision. Along with these distinctions, she also serves on many advisory councils, worked with the Clean Air Council, and as I said, with Diane on a number of works. And the curator of a show really is the person who tells us the story, who takes the artist's work and puts it together in a cohesive way so that it tells us a story and gives us a message. And I'm going to let Diane talk to you more about how she does this and her vision for the show. I mean Cynthia. Diane's going to talk to you also, but Cynthia.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good evening. I want to thank all my friends and colleagues and family who have come tonight. It really makes it extra special to be here. It's difficult to contain my remarks to 5 minutes because the artist, Diane Burko, is such an expansive subject, but I will comply. When I met Diane in the mid-1980s, we were both teaching at Community College of Philadelphia. She taught painting, I taught art history. I was immediately impressed by her landscape paintings and drawings. I was equally drawn to her personality, strong, upbeat, persuasive. I had no idea that she had been central to the feminist art movement in Philadelphia and had organized a citywide showcase of women artists in 1973 called Focus. Fast forward to 2015. I reconnected with Diane after I had begun volunteering with the Clean Air Council. And environmental advocacy has been a passion of mine since high school. Diane had refocused her efforts toward learning about global warming and communicating its disastrous effects on our fragile planet. We were kindred spirits for environmental advocacy and activism. At that point, I intuited that some sort of collaboration was forthcoming. Diane's tools are her camera and paintbrush and pencil, and mine are the written word. I felt an urgency to promote her work and the message. I recommended she be interviewed for the Smithsonian Archives of American Art. That happened. Tonight is the joyful fruition of our combined efforts, and it happens during Hanukkah, so good timing. The cantor made some remarks about the mission here to promote Jewish artists and Jewish art and the mission of social action and responsibility. I want to point out that this exhibition is the first to align Diane's mission with Jewish traditions and texts which address the caretaking of our earth. I have selected large and small works of different media for this exhibition. The largest show the majesty of the glaciers before and after their recession. Some of the small works focus on a microcosm of ice or ocean, revealing the complex designs in divine creation. And now I would like to introduce another divine creation, Diane Burko.
That was a nice segue, wasn't it? Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm just going to get a little set up here. Cindy's right. I was a little hesitant when Hank Bernstein first suggested that I have a show at Road of Shalom. I said, I don't know. You know, it just didn't sit right until he spoke to me about the tradition of Tikkun Olam and made me realize, yeah, this is how I connect as a Jew and as an activist. So I'm thrilled that it all worked out. I'm thrilled that I was able to work with Cindy and Janine and the rest of wonderful staff here, the cantor, the rabbi, Catherine. I'm going to leave out somebody, but I want to thank you all for making this possible. So what I'm going to do tonight is get my computer set up. Okay, and I'm going to just very quickly, because we all want to get to the laka, right? So I'm not going to speak long, but hopefully I'll give you a sense of my journey and how I got from here to there. So first we'll see if this works. This is the first thing. This is the first test. It's on, but the light's not coming on. Ah, I see a light. It's still not working. Let's see. This is a remote. If it doesn't work, I'll just have to forward it. I guess I'll just forward. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about my practice as an artist and how I got to the juncture of being a painter, an artist, but also an environmental activist. And basically, how does an artist make their work? What makes up that? Well, for me, I'm kind of what they call a research-based artist. And how do I do my research? Well, one way is by being out there. And that's how I get my inspiration. And then, of course, I take that inspiration, I'll show you all the different ways I get it in a minute, and I take it into the studio and I try to figure out What can I do with that as an artist? And then the third thing I've been doing for the last 10 or 15 years is communicating, as I'm doing with you tonight, because I feel this urgency to not just make my art in the studio, but also to get out there and talk about it in terms of climate change, in terms of our environment, and how crucial, especially in the world of Trump. Did I say that? Excuse me. It is today. So we really have to work hard. And I also do it through art exhibitions. Okay, this is what artists do. They go to the studio, they make art, and then they want to see it on the walls. Every artist wants that. But again, I try to use those exhibitions as another way of having a public engagement. So I make sure, and this is if there are any curators, I think there are some who know me, I will not do an exhibition at this point in my career unless it's also connected to programming, talking to students in the university. And I don't just mean the art students. I want to talk to the sociology students, the environmental students, the geologists. So I do a lot of that, and I organize panels. But I'm also an activist, okay? So I don't just do that, I also am out there, and as Cindy pointed out, I have been doing that for quite a while. But I think it's important to understand that activism wasn't designed in the 60s, it's been around forever, and artists way back last century, the century before, were very interested in the environment, and they were very interested in doing something about it. So you have Moran, for instance, who really is the reason why you have the national parks, Yosemite National Park. He was behind it. And then, of course, you think of Ansel Adams, another great figure in photography, who was one of the leaders of the conservation movement. And that kind of energy continues today. My husband and I were just in Toronto to see this incredible Anthropocene show. Anyone can get up there. I urge you to. It's Bertinsky and his filmmakers. It's an incredible show. And it's about the environment in a very particular point of view of how industry and mining are impinging, encroaching, and ruining our environment. It's not just photographers, it's not just painters, there are lots of other kinds of artists that are involved in trying to bring attention to this issue, and certainly I think Olafur Eliasson is a great example. So that gives you a spread of how I'm doing my stuff in a way. I'll show you more. But how did it all happen? Well, how much time do we have? I've been doing this for more than 40 years. I know you don't want me to go back and do all that. But what I have done is in about 5 images, I will show you 45 years. Okay, are you ready? Okay. At the beginning, see that? In the beginning, our Earth. I thought that was very biblical. Okay, in the beginning, I really saw the earth, the landscape, as something I wanted to embrace. Why? Well, I'm a person, can you tell, from Brooklyn, and therefore I did not grow up in the great, wide, open spaces, yet I really was awe-stricken to see the West and to see that wonderful kind of outdoor sky that you didn't see in Brooklyn living in an apartment building. So I started out the way artists do for centuries, en plein air, you know, in the French tradition. And I had a lot of number of residencies that helped me do that. 2 of them are on the screen. And one of the first visions and environments that really blew my mind was the Grand Canyon. Of course, the same thing, Brooklyn, Grand Canyon. It's quite a stretch. So, how did I begin doing this? I thought I was going to actually just look into the Grand Canyon because I was having a show at Arizona State University, but luck would have it, I met an artist named Jim Terrell, and he said the only way you can see the Grand Canyon is to fly into it. How do you do that? Well, I have a plane, he said. Indeed, he did. And so I flew with Jim Terrell into the Grand Canyon where the wings kind of were touching the tips. We went under bridges, it was very crazy. And that really began my whole orientation. Twofold. Practice-wise, it meant that I always had to fly, I always had to shoot my own images, and it also had to do with wanting more of these wonderful geological experiences, which I realized a little later in life. But this is not too geological. This was a residency. I've had a lot of you know this work, so I thought I'd pop it in. This gives us another decade. We just went from the late 70s to the early 90s, and then we're moving right along in the 90s, and there I am doing volcanoes. I did a 4-year project on volcanoes, started here before I knew I was going to get a Lee Alter Leeway Award. I thank her from the bottom of my heart. It was a $50,000 grant that allowed me as an artist to spend 4 years traveling and paying the helicopters so that I could look out with the door open down into an image like that, feeling the heat coming up, and my shooting, and then going back to the studio and making art. I traveled to Alaska, Hawaii, Italy, Etna, Vesuvius, and then the last place we went to was Iceland. I thought I was going for the volcanoes, but they're under the ice, and what you have a great deal of are faucet waterfalls. So I did a whole series of waterfalls. Moving right along, I told you this is very quick, we're all the way into 2011. An example of photography, because as Cindy so well did, she really wanted to show a range of the kind of materials and media I use. This is a 40 by 60 image, and I did a lot of those. This is again from an open door helicopter. I wanted to see Grinnell that's outside in your lobby. So then the environment as opposed to the landscape. And it was a very important moment. I knew it exactly when it happened, because everybody says, well, why did you change? What happened? It was 2006. I had a show at the Michener, and the show was basically about volcanoes, icebergs, and it was a traveling show, and when we got to the Michener, they had more room. So the curator said, you know, you used to do ice and snow way back in the 70s. Do you have any of those paintings? And then we looked, and actually, we had one. We had that one. Well, that painting in this show in 2006 was done in 1976. You get it? It was 30 years earlier. That was kind of freaky to think about that. So as I'm talking to everyone about show, you know, you're doing the walkthrough, I'm thinking, oh my God, 30 years. So much has changed. I've changed. So much of my life has changed. And then I started thinking about the snow. I wonder if that snow is still there, I thought. Now, why would I think that in 2006? Well, it was a very pivotal year in terms of climate change. It was the year that Al Gore showed his movie, okay? By the way, there is a second one, you should all see it. It's even stronger than the first. Excuse me. It was also the same year that Elizabeth Kolbert came out with her book, okay, Field Notes of Catastrophe. She was printing all these essays were coming out in the New Yorker all the time, and then it became a book. So I left there thinking I had to do something about it. I had no idea what I was going to do, and I had just finished my volcano series. So I went back to the studio, and I started thinking about 30 years ago, 46th Street, where I have a friend who remembers me from way back then. And I looked at the images I was doing then, and I was trying to figure out how can I talk about climate change and still be an artist, still do it in my language. So one of the first things I did is I had a whole book on this iconic Mount Matterhorn image. I have a book, black and whites. So that was my first idea. I do a whole series of Matterhorns, and people would look at it, right? I thought some more. I played around with Matterhorn some more, and the Berkowitzes are here tonight, and they were kind enough to loan the ones on your right, but there's one on your left. I did a whole series of them. That was one of the last ones. So that was how I started thinking about it, but then I started reading, and I found out there are lots of other ways that I might be able to talk about this visually. Repeat photography was the first thing I discovered, and I realized that geologists, glaciologists, they have these images. They are comparing things, not only measuring, they're also photographing. And so I started using those sources, and in your exhibition, you have a great example of that in the Grinnell series. First one is from 1938. The last one is from 2006. Hello? Do you see the difference? Okay? So you know, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So I kept going to these sources. I did a whole series, had a whole show at Lux Gallery in 2010, just about that concept. And I'm happy to say those same paintings were just featured in the New York Review of Books with an article by Bill McKibben about the latest IPCC report. So that was kind of a nifty kind of hook in. Bill McKibben, the founder of 350.org. Here's another example of a source, another painting that's in your exhibition. There's the painting. So I did that for a while. Like I said, a lot of it was shown in 2010. And then I had to find another way because artists, or this kind of an artist, I get bored if I figured everything out. I have to then do something that challenges me, and I already, enough with the repeats. I had to figure out something else I could do, and recessional lines was the next thing I discovered. Another piece in your show. Cindy's been really good in the way we coordinated and tried to find highlights that talk about how I use imagery to talk about climate change. So imagery, well, recessional lines are how, again, glaciologists will note where a glacier was and where it's going. Now, it's not all bleak, and I don't want to be extreme, because glaciers, you could say, don't they advance? And they do. They advance and they recede. They do both. Unfortunately, most of them today are receding dramatically. Okay. I found another way of talking about climate change, Landsat imagery, satellite imagery, and those images are fantastically beautiful. And that was the problem. I had to figure out how to use them so they were beautiful, but they also told the story. So here's an example of one in an exhibition, and then I used others. Another example here. And one here, and this is part of a 4-part series. Those two were in a show recently at the Walton Arts Center, and what you see there is the second one is indeed showing you recessional lines as well, and that's about, I did a lot of paintings about this glacier, Jakobshavn Glacier. It is the western edge of Greenland, fastest moving glacier in the northern hemisphere. What's really cool about it is you should know that one of those icebergs sunk the Titanic. So this is an important glacier that keeps receding dramatically. There's another example. After a while doing this, using everyone else's image, I felt that I had to get out there, because if you looked at the work before, everything I did before the climate change stuff was all my own research in terms of bearing witness. But I stopped doing that because I was using all this historical scientific data, and that's the way I was telling my story. So in 2013, I was fortunate enough to get a residency to go to Svalbard. And there I am, on a glacier, Svalbard. Do we all know where Svalbard is? I know, I didn't either. Svalbard is 400 miles north of Norway, 10 degrees below the pole. So it's really up there in the Arctic Circle. So that began my bearing witness. And Cindy and I thought it would be cool for the students, because it's another reason why we're doing this exhibition, is so that I can relate to your student body. And in that little room, we show you all the different bipolar activity my husband Richard and I have had. It's just changed recently. So that is how I started bearing witness. But how else? Well, I learned from scientists by clipping articles, by reading books, by looking at articles. And articles, especially on the internet, would always give me new visual ideas. And these set of articles were really very, very cool. The Earth Observatory is a great site that I go to all the time. This is about Petermann Glacier. Petermann Glacier is, again, another glacier off of Greenland. And it fell off, big deal. So part of the glacier falls off. It's 4 times the size of Manhattan. That's a big deal. So I did a series of paintings about that. Another way I would learn is by going to conferences. And I was first invited in 2012 to go to the AGU. I had no idea what that meant. American Geophysical Union, 25,000, I'm not exaggerating, Earth scientists from all over the world come together every year. And they were beginning to realize that they had to talk about how artists can communicate climate change. Another cool thing in 2016, I've gone a number of times and spoken a number of times, this was a very important year. The conference happens in December, and you remember what happened in November. And so, these scientists were really freaked about what was going to happen. Everyone was afraid their data was going to be stolen. There was a lot of energy. And scientists, you know, are trying very hard to be even in their reporting. But there's nothing even about climate change. And so there you saw them out there. And one of those people is Naomi Oreskes, who you might know, a very important leader. And I go to conferences, so there are some examples of conferences. This one was very cool because it was in New Zealand. Just happened to be there giving a lecture at a university. They said, oh, we're having a cryosphere conference. You should speak there too. Okay, so again, I learned a lot from a lot of scientists, Reykjavik, and of course, learning from them in the field. Okay, that is, again, a very important part of my work because when I talk to students, I really understand. I mean, not like a geologist because I haven't studied as long as they have, but I have an experiential connection to this issue. And I'm a member of INSTAR, so I've been out there. I look at their archives. There we are in New Zealand. And of late, I've moved, as you see from the new work, from the Arctic to the coral reef, to the oceans. The oceans, which are 70% of our planet. And I've moved particularly to learning about coral reefs. So these are just some examples of my visiting various places. This place, the Hawaiian Institute of Marine Biology, was especially significant because I was able to look through a confocal microscope. What does that mean? It means I could actually see a polyp. I could see a live reef. Now, what is a reef? It's very complicated, and it's much more difficult to paint about than glaciers, because a reef is animal, mineral, and plant. It's all those things together. And you know, when we think of coral reefs, we see that white stuff, that's when it's dead already. That's like their apartment buildings, okay? They've already left, okay? So what I was seeing here are real live animal working. Maybe just to go a little bit, I don't want to give you too much detail. If you're interested later, I'll tell you more. Because I know everyone's really wanting to get to the Galapagos. Okay, so there I am, learning a great deal and using, the thing is I've used this material for a video. I said earlier, what I do is I go out, do all this research, and then I get back into the studio and I do my work. And this is just a series of images to give you a sense of what I do in the studio over the last few years. And this image is the last one, really, of the kind of work that I've been doing with glaciers, okay? And I'm thanks to Hank, I think it was his idea to have a book sale here. I appreciate that. And I was happy enough to, with this last exhibition, to have this book published. And this is about glaciers. However, in 2017, when I had that exhibition, the Earth kept getting warmer. And I started thinking about coral reefs. What made me also get really into it is that we went to New Zealand because I wanted to see Franz Josef Glacier, for instance, which was really dying, and that whole area in South Island. However, once you're down there, you gotta go to Australia. And once you're in Australia, you have to see the Great Barrier Reef. So indeed, that began my research into the Great Barrier Reef. This is just one example of a photo series. Soon after that, by very serendipitous situation, I was invited to be on a grant, be part of a grant to go to parks, American parks, and I was part of a group of musicians and divers, go figure. I didn't even know how to swim, but they wanted me along because I was an ecological artist. Then we got a scientist to join us, we got the grant, and the idea was to go to the national parks in America that have reefs. Why National Parks America? It was an American music grant. So I go back to the studio before we go, and I'm thinking to myself as an artist, what am I going to do? I don't want to paint coral reefs, you know, like draw them. I don't want to draw fish. How am I going to figure out what to do? And it was really a challenge, and that's what I like. But at the time, it really freaked me out because I had no idea what I was going to do. And this is an example of me searching. By December, right before we left, I had a little bit of an idea of at least how I was going to approach this. And I was going to approach it totally different from anything I've done before. Instead of standing there and painting with a brush, I was going to spill stuff down because it's about water, okay? And I was using acrylics, which is a water-based paint. So that was sort of the direction I was going in before, and then we got there. I learned how to swim, by the way. Not well, but well enough to snorkel, wear my wetsuit. So we went on this 1-month adventure in the Pacific, started in Hawaii and moved to American Samoa, and we gathered more material. Richard did all the drone work. We got imagery from above. We got imagery from above, even though we were under the water. And then I got back to the studio and I started working nonstop because I had a show that was opening in August and I got back in February. So they actually just wanted glaciers, but once they heard I was doing reefs, they said, oh, we have a great idea for a title. How's about Endangered from Glaciers to Reefs? Yes. And so it all worked out. Here's a shot of the studio as things were coming together. And one of the things I did, which you see with the lenticulars, is I collaborated with Anna Tass, who had to leave because she has 2 little kids. But she was a friend of mine, an assistant. She was doing these great lenticulars. You know what a lenticular is? It's, remember Jack? With this audience, you all remember Cracker Jacks, right? And in Cracker Jacks, they used to have those little plastic things, and if you turned it one way, it was a puppy, and another way, it was a clown. Remember those things? Okay, that is the concept of lenticular. So Anna was doing them, and she was doing them with that kind of, not that imagery, but one to the other. And I said, is there a way of figuring out how to do it about water, about something moving? We figured it out, and what we did is we used oil, we used baby oil, we used soap, we used pigments, we used acrylics, we played around. And there you have me playing around and Anna shooting. And what we were doing is actually creating a moving thing. Let's see if it's going to move for us. There you go. So there we were, she's shooting, and we were taking stills. And we would see lots of stills, and we'd go back up to the studio with 50 or 60 of them, and we'd pick about 15. Those were our frames, and the frames would go back and forth, one way and the other. And from those frames, those lenticulars that you see outside came. So that basically was our process. And there you get a sense of, well, that's just a gift, but it gives you a sense of lenticulars. And they weren't just random. They're all about experiences that I had when I was in the Pacific, and they also were from the experiences of the labs that we had gone to. And those lab experiences resulted in another media that you can't see here, but if you get to the National Academy of Sciences, before August 30th, I mean, not August, January 30th of next year, you can see my portal. And when you look into this portal, you can see a video. And actually, go on my website, you can get a sense of it. And there is the installation at the museum. And there's the other book that's available for you that was just published. So, you would think, that's it. Show opened in August, but I don't stay still, and I'm still making work. And these 4 paintings are in your show. When I did these, I remember saying, probably to Cindy, you know, I'm doing these paintings, they're very narrative. These are the most narrative ones I've done because they're really talking about the cycle. I don't know. And then other people looked, oh, they love them. I actually did a whole other series of them. So yeah, and those are the cycles of what happens to, maybe I should just go back. That first one is about coral in its normal state, or this is coral that's, around the equator, all different kinds of coral. And then the next one is about coral that's being intensely colored because it's in trouble, okay? Sort of like what happens with autumn leaves, okay? And then what happens to the coral if it continues getting in trouble? Why would it get in trouble? I will tell you. Because too much acid in the water, too much CO2 in the water, too much heat in the water. They're very delicate. And you have a photosynthesis going on with the plants that feed the polyps. And when things don't go right, the polyps start dying. They leave the calcium carbonate that they have created, which are their homes. And then you get that third one. And then after they're all empty, yucky stuff, yucky algae grows. So that's what that's all about. And I decided I was going to do a big series on that same idea, and there are the finished paintings. And those are 5 feet by 5 feet. This is the last painting that I've done, and it's about the Great Barrier Reef. I literally finished it last week. So I'm continuing to work on this project. I'm also continuing the research. And ironically, there's a great lab right here in Philadelphia that I didn't know about until I read the New York Times. It's the Eric Cordes lab. I've been there twice. They are researching deep coral. Who knew there was coral that goes deep, deep, deep into the ocean? So I visited with them. He discovered this incredible coral that's like 800 feet down, really old, and very important because they want to drill along the Carolinas, and now they're not. And I'm continuing to go to conferences, so I think I brought you totally up to date, and that's enough. We need some vodka and vodka, right? Thank you.
Thank you to all our presenters, and I hope you've gotten a little bit of some insight into what goes into the work that Diane has on display. I invite you to come back into the gallery and take a look at the work. Diane will be around, Cynthia will be around to talk to. I invite those of you who are coming to Live Kavadka to come with us into the social room. And if you weren't planning on attending, but would like to attend, you're welcome. There is a fee, this is our fundraiser, but we invite anyone who would like to join us. So thank you again for coming, thank you for supporting tonight. Again, enjoy the evening.